Hi, this is Rabbi Orlofsky. Welcome to our special additional Rabbi Orlofsky Show podcast before the Yom Noraim. And probably for many people, this will be the last show you'll be watching before Rosh Hashanah. As we go, Sunday night is already Rosh Hashanah, so there's going to be another podcast that comes out Motzi Shabbos. You may not get a chance to watch it. Well, with Erev Rosh Hashanah, there's so much to do. Social experience of having to go to the mikveh. Not everybody, it's an interesting thing. There are certain people who only go to the mikveh Erev Yom Kippur. There are some people who only go to the mikveh Erev Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. There are certain people who only go before the Shalosh Regalim. There are some people who go every Erev Shabbos, and obviously some people go every day. But on the crunch times, it's an incredible social experience. I want to talk about this one time. I guess I'm going to save it for our second year of the Rabbi Orlofsky Show, when I've already more or less established or lost my credibility with my listening audience. So when you tune in, you know what you're in for. It's really too late. And so this is it. We're going into Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara Megillah tells us that you're supposed to, before Rosh Hashanah, read Parshas Kisavai. Taisus adds, and also Parshas Nitzavim. Shetichlo Shana and Kiloiseha, to end the year with the curses. So we read the curses that are described in Parshas Kisavo and in Parshas Nitzavim, in order to be able to, by reading the curses, end the year of all the curses. How that works is really for another discussion. I want to focus on one thing that we're going to see in Parshas Nitzavim this week, which Mamish is what we're going to be reading just before Rosh Hashanah. And it's an idea I heard from Rabbi Orlofsky many years ago, and it's something that I found particularly meaningful and insightful, and certainly going into Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, I think it's an idea we need to focus on. It says in the parasha, Ki mitzvah azois asher anochi mitzavecha hayom, the mitzvah I command you today, lo nifleis hi mimcha v'lo rechaikehi. It's not too hard for you, it's not too far away. Lo b'shamayim hi leimor, it's not up in the heavens. So that a person has to say, Mi ya'ale lanu hashamayim v'yikachecha lanu. Who will go up to heaven and get it for us? V'yashmeinu asav v'na'asana, so that we can do it. V'lo me'evel hayam hi. Leimor, mi ya'aver lanu azever hayam v'yikachecha lanu v'yashmeinu asav v'na'asana. So that who's going to cross the sea to get it for us, so we can hear it and do it? It's very close to you in your mouth and in your heart to do it. What's the mitzvah zos? So basically, what did we say in this parsha? This mitzvah is not too hard for you, it's not too far away, it's not up in the heavens, it's not on the other side of the sea. What are we talking about? That's so easy and so close to you, it's Torah. Torah, as Rashi says, it was given to you by Torah Shebiksav, Torah Shebal Peh. It's explained to you, it's clear to you, it's accessible to you. And this whole thing is talking about Torah. And in general, that's a very important point. Because we think of this journey to find the truth. People climb up mountains in India to find someone meditating at an ashram, to be able to share with us the truth. There was this middle-aged Jewish woman. She flies to India. She takes a train up into the mountains. She switches to a car. Eventually she gets on a mule. It's the only thing that can get up through these mountain passes. And she finally comes up into the ashram. And she comes into the ashram, and the fellow in charge, the yogi, the swami, the whatever he is sitting there meditating. And she comes in. She says, I would like to speak to the fellow in charge there. They say, listen, he's meditating now, you can't disturb him. No, I just want to talk to him for a minute. says, no, you can't even speak to him for a minute. He's meditating. He says, I just want to say 3 words to him. Okay. So they usher him to his presence. He's meditating. She looks at him and says, Sheldon, come home. But people think you have to climb mountains. You have to go and search for the truth. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you don't have to go into outer space. You don't have to go on an expedition overseas searching for the truth. I give you the truth. It's right there. Rav Noach Weinberg says, when a person is born, a malach hits him on the lip, and he forgets all his Torah. He says, why does he hit him over here? He says, to teach you that when you go searching for the truth, the first place to look is right under your nose. So on that level, it's definitely true. The Torah is very available. But the Ramban says that this mitzvah is not too hard for you, not too far away, not too difficult for you. It's very close to you. And says the Ramban, the mitzvah is the mitzvah of Teshuva. And I remember in a sicha, in a shmuz, in a talk, Rabbi Orlofsky asked, what do you mean it's so easy, it's so close to you? Teshuva is so easy? It's so accessible? You see how hard people work trying to do Teshuva? So he said the following idea, and I think this is so important, especially when we're going into Rosh Hashanah. He said, doing Teshuva is easy. What's hard is recognizing that I have to do Teshuva. Because to come to a realization that I did something wrong, and now, wow, I feel terrible about it, and I've got to change it. They used to say, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? It says 1, but only if the light bulb wants to change. The hardest part is believing I did anything wrong. And he quoted the famous story of Rabbi Isaac Sher, where he meets this boy before Rosh Hashanah. He says, no, getting ready for Yom Adin? He says, oh, of course, Rebbe. He says, you're doing Teshuva? He says, oh, yeah, of course I'm doing Teshuva. He says, for what? For different affairs. He says, like what? I don't know. He says, well, let's go down the list. Shvichas Damim? Did you ever kill anybody? No. Oh, good, Baruch Hashem. Avodah Zarah? No. Oh, good, yeah. Gilei Arayos? No. Oh, okay, great. And he keeps going down the list. He says, Lashon Hara? Yeah, there were times I spoke Lashon Hara, but it was always for a toelis, it was for a purpose, it wasn't stam, Bittul Torah? Yeah, there were times I was Bittul Torah, but it was always with a cheshbon, it wasn't stam, and he goes down the line. And finally he goes, you Russia, you're never going to do Teshuva. How can you do Teshuva? You've never done anything wrong in your life. You never embarrassed somebody in public? That's like killing them. You never looked at a girl? That's called Gilei Arayos according to the Mesilas Yesharim. The only reason you haven't done Avodah Zarah is because the Anshe Knesset Gedolah were Mavatal the Taiva for it. The only reason you didn't do idol worship is that the men of the Great Assembly took away the desire for it. Oh, you would have done that too. You speak Lashon Hara, you Mavatal Torah, you do all these terrible things, but in your mind you've never done anything wrong. So how are you ever going to change? The first step is recognizing that I have what to change. And that's the hardest thing. I had a ride back once with Dr. Reinfeld, who's a well-known psychologist, coming back from a Moshe Shapiro Shir on a Thursday night. And I said to him, I used to be in the field, and now I'm retired, just living off my past reputation. But when I would meet with people, sometimes I'd meet with somebody, and I knew instantly what the problem was. And I would try to tell them, and they'd say, no, that's not it. No, I see why you might think that, but no, that's that's not the problem yet. And they'd come back to me, sometimes months, sometimes years later, and they'd say, you were right, I just wasn't ready to hear it then. And that's a big problem. I'm not ready to hear it yet. So I said, so a person comes to you, and you can evaluate what the problem is right away. And he looks at me and he smiles and he says, that's the hardest part of my job. I have to allow the people to be able to come to a recognition on their own of what their problem is. And people don't want to. People don't want to acknowledge that they have a problem. I just met somebody who's working on the 12-step plan for two different addictions that he has. And the first thing you have to do is stand up and say, I am an addict. I have to recognize it. A lot of people who have addictions, they don't recognize they have addictions. Yeah, I like to have a drink every now and then. Yeah, I gamble every now and then. But they don't see that they're addicted to the behavior. They don't recognize it in those terms. I have to first acknowledge it. Yes. Chatasi, avisi, poshati. I've sinned. I've transgressed. I've done bad things. I have to be able to say it. Right? Vidui is an essential part of tshuva. I have to admit it. And that's where we clap al chet. There's one of the things we do wrong is vidui bepeh. We say it and we don't mean it. It's insincere vidui, insincere confession. I say it, but I don't mean it. Because if I really meant it, if I really sensed that I did something wrong, now how many times do we tell ourselves, yeah, I did this, but it's not such a big deal. It's not a big deal, right? And part of that is very simple. Right? Part of being an adult is taking responsibility. I remember the last adult president we had was Ronald Reagan. And I remember when there was a car bombing in Lebanon, he got on television and he said, I am the president of the United States. I am the commander-in-chief. The buck stops here. I am responsible for this. Because being an adult means taking responsibility. I remember when we had President Clinton, first baby boomer president, and he lied under oath. And he said, it's not my fault. I wouldn't have lied if you hadn't asked me the question. So it's not my fault. When I was mashgiach, there was this kid who was much more mature than everybody else. I know because he kept telling everybody how mature he was. And, because most people came right out of high school and he had a year in college, and so he was much more mature, and he would always tell everybody how mature he was. And one time I said to him, maturity, it means responsibility. And davening is at 7:15, and you don't get out of bed until after 11, often after 12. And he looked at me and said, maybe you should be asking yourself why you can't inspire me to get up earlier. Because at the end of the day, this is your failure, Rabbi, isn't it? I was stunned. It was stunning to me that a person could have no sense of responsibility. It's not my fault, it's your fault. It's your fault for not making me want to get up in the morning, for not inspiring me. I meet people who decided, I'm not from anymore. Why? Oh, this one was bad to me. That one was bad to me. I had a Rebbe, he wasn't nice. I went to a doctor who was incompetent. I was here learning in Eretz Yisrael. I had hepatitis. I didn't know I had hepatitis. I knew I couldn't move, and I knew that I was throwing up everything, and it was terrible. And this doctor came, and checked me out, and he said, it's a stomach virus. And the next day it was even worse. So they brought in a real doctor, and he said right away that it's hepatitis. And then this guy sent me a bill. He says I was thrown off because you were wearing yellow pajamas. Now, do you think, therefore, I never go to a doctor anymore? I've turned my back on medical science because I met a doctor who was incompetent, or I met a doctor who was bad, or who was mean to me? No. Modern medicine makes sense. What do I care whether or not this person did something wrong? But the alternative is for us to take responsibility, and people can't do it. So I taught for many years in seminaries and things, in colleges. So you'd have somebody, you have a roommate. I'd say, why'd you use my laptop? I didn't think you'd mind. Yeah, but I told you a whole bunch of times not to use my laptop. I didn't think it would matter. No, but I told you not to. Okay, fine. Okay, I'm a thief. Okay, you happy? I'm the worst person in the world. You happy now? You happy? No, I would be happier if you said, you're right, and I'm sorry. The reason Rosh Hashanah really went off the rails was that was the day that Adam HaRishon was created. And he ate from the tree, the only mitzvah that he had. Don't eat from the tree. And he ate from the tree. And God comes to him and says, why did you eat from the tree? And there's only one correct answer. You're right. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it. That would have been the end of the story. And God would have forgiven him. We wouldn't have needed all these years of history and everything we've been through. But instead of saying that, Adam HaRishon said, it's not my fault, my wife's fault. And he says to the wife, why did you eat from the tree? He goes, it's not my fault, it's the snake's fault. So I never really did anything wrong. And had we on that first Rosh Hashanah stood up and say, you're right, I did something wrong, I acknowledge it, and I'm sorry. Well, we couldn't do it. We just couldn't do it. There's something in many people that they just are incapable of taking responsibility for what they've done. When I was a kid, I remember I broke my leg. And nobody thought I was going to sue them. And if you're walking and you break your leg, I'm back when I was a kid, the storekeeper would come out and say, you idiot, why don't you watch where you're going? And he'd call your father, and your father would say, you idiot, why don't you watch where you're going? And then he would take you to the hospital, and the doctor would say, you idiot, why don't you watch where you're going? And you put on a cast, and when you got it off, you watched where you were going. And now if I fall down, it's your fault. Because you had a hard sidewalk, and you didn't take that into account. And they give out an award every year for the people who come out with the most outrageous condition where they're blaming somebody else for a situation. It was named after the lady who bought a cup of coffee in McDonald's, held it between her legs while she was driving, and then burnt herself and crashed and sued McDonald's because the coffee was hot. And now to this day, whenever you buy a coffee, written on the cardboard container is caution, contents might be hot. Because it's coffee that you bought. Of course it might be hot. But you can't hold me responsible for that. So now, when you buy a Superman costume, it writes on the box, caution, does not allow wearer to fly. And people got awards for the most outrageous examples. A guy was driving his Winnebago, and he had it on cruise control. And then he went in the back to get a drink, having confused cruise control with automatic pilot. And of course, the road turned, and he went off and crashed and survived, and sued Winnebago and won a new Winnebago. And now if you look in their manual, it says, caution, must continue to drive vehicle when in cruise control. And then someone showed me a label on a hairdryer that said, do not use underwater, which is no different than a power saw that a guy showed me, where it said, do not cut wood on your lap. Excellent advice. Or my all-time favorite example, Mr. Peanut. It's called Mr. Peanut. The jar is shaped like a peanut. The mascot is Mr. Peanut, who is a peanut. You know, he's got a hat and a monocle but he's a peanut. And it says on the front, Planters Peanuts. And on the side, there's a label, caution, may contain peanuts. Because it's not my fault. Can't be my fault. When someone walks down the street and they stumble, they right away turn around. They're sure that a fissure must have opened up in the earth and, grabbed their foot. It can't be that I just stumbled. It can't be my fault. Nothing can be my fault. Teshuva is easy. The Ramban learns the pasuk. Teshuva is easy. But to be able to take a hard look at yourself and realize, my name is Dave and I'm an addict. Yay, Dave. To be able to have that ability to be able to stand up and say, I did something wrong. And I think the reason that we do this is because it's hard for us to be able to live with ourselves if I actually acknowledge that I've done wrong things. It's so hard because I have to have enough confidence that I'm a good person who did something wrong and not that I did something wrong and therefore I'm a bad person. You need a certain amount of self-acceptance. And that's why maybe we'll talk about this before Yom Kippur, but Rabbi Orlofsky says, if you're still doing things wrong, don't focus on regret, focus on changing the action. Because if you just regret, you'll just feel bad, and then you won't have the strength to be able to change. Don't work on charata. Work on azivas hachet. Work on changing who you are. Just stop it. I say to a guy, he stepped on my foot, and the guy says, I don't know what's wrong with me. I try to be more careful. I try to be more conscious, but I'm just not careful enough, and I don't know why I do these things. No. First, get off my foot, okay? Then we could talk about anything else. But don't sit here apologizing while you're still standing on my foot. When I'm doing things wrong, what I need to do is change my behavior patterns. Then I can worry about regretting the bad decisions I made. But if I'm just going to focus on regret, I'm not going to get anywhere. I have to acknowledge I have a problem, and I have to work on changing it. And then teshuva is easy. This is a common newlywed fight. A wife says to her husband, you hurt my feelings. And he said, no, I didn't. She says, my feelings were hurt. He says, your feelings might be hurt, but it has nothing to do with me. Because what I said was not hurtful, objectively. Now, it could very well be he's right. Could be he's right. What he said was not objectively hurtful, but the wife is describing the fact that I feel hurt. It's a reality. So he's not going to apologize. He'll say, okay, I'm sorry if you think that I did something, which I didn't. Okay. But if I'm incapable of acknowledging I did anything wrong, why in the world would I ever change it? You don't change something if there's nothing wrong. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that in order to be able to do tshuva, and once you do that, it's very easy. But first I have to be able to sit down and acknowledge, yeah, I did something wrong. And I'm a good person. I may have mentioned this in an earlier podcast. The best Mussar Shmuz I ever got was not from a mashgiach in a yeshiva. It was from a Nassau County police officer. I had gotten my license in Los Angeles, and I was driving, and I got a ticket. And someone says to me, you don't have to worry. There's no reciprocity between New York and California. Well, that's all my childish mind needed to hear. In my mind, it rendered me invisible and invulnerable. Nobody could touch me. And so I was not careful about how I drove, and I got a bunch of tickets, which I basically just discarded. And then one time, it was late at night, I was driving home, and it was a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. I was going 45. The cop was waiting for people to pick them up because they know it was late at night, and everybody drives quickly down that little stretch. Yeah. And he pulls me over. License registration, I had my California license. And he says, you're driving with a suspended license. And I said, no, I have a California license. There's no reciprocity between New York and California. He says, you're right. We can't suspend your driving privileges in California, but we can in New York, and we have. You've driven with a suspended license. That's a misdemeanor. I could take you to jail. And so I said, go to jail, I don't want to go to jail. I completely fell apart. And he said to me, listen, you're not a bad person, but you did something stupid, and now you have to face the consequences. I'm not going to arrest you. I'm going to let you drive home, but this is a serious thing. You better get yourself a lawyer and straighten it out. And I got myself a lawyer, and I paid a lot of money, and they worked out some kind of a plea deal, and I had 1 million points on my license, and it took a very long time for me to clear my driving record. But those words echo in my head 40 years later. You're not a bad person, but you did something stupid, and now you have to face the consequences. If you can recognize that I'm a good person who did something wrong, something I need to change, something I need to improve, then you can go in to the Yemei Hadin, and then tshuva will be easy. But if you have excuses, and you have explanations, and you have reasons, and I'm a victim of circumstances, and it's not my fault, it's this one's fault, and that one's fault, and everybody else's fault, how are you ever going to change? I have to be able to acknowledge that I have shortcomings. A tzaddik falls 7 times, but picks himself up. Tzaddik is not somebody who never falls. Person falls short. A person falls below expectations. We do things that are thoughtless. Parshas Ekev. It's a mitzvah such a dash ba'akevai. We trample them as we're just walking down the street. We don't think about them because people don't think. Sometimes. And then we end up doing bad things. And if we can recognize, yes, I've done bad things, and I need to change it, then tshuva itself is easy. As the Rambam explains, you first have to recognize the sin. Then you have to regret it. Then you have to admit it. And then you have to take upon yourself to change in the future. And if a person can do those steps, that's tshuva. It can change. It can become a better person. The hardest part is the first part, to admit that I have a problem, to see my shortcomings, and then to be able to not reject myself because of those shortcomings and say, you're a good person, but you did something stupid, and you have to face the consequences. Rosh Hashanah comes once a year. And we have to figure out where we've been before we can figure out where we're going. I don't have to become perfect tomorrow, but I have to be able to at least acknowledge what my shortcomings are. And I have to go step by step by step and change. But I'm never going to change if I've never done anything wrong. As Rabbi Isaac Sher said, look at all the things you've done wrong, but in your mind, you've never done anything wrong. Everything is somebody else's fault or circumstances or this, but it's not me. That's the obligation. The obligation is for you to be able to stand up and be an adult and take responsibility. And we live in a world where nobody wants to take responsibility. Everybody is a victim. Everybody's been abused. Everyone's been hurt. And to find yourself as a person who can stand up and take responsibility, wow, that makes you one of the greats of our generation. And Amir Hashem, as we get ready for Yemei Adin, a few days away, during the Yemei Slichos, Oshamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu, Dofi. Ay, 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 ay. My brother had a heart attack, and afterwards he developed a fibrillation of the heart. This was decades ago. And that meant that every now and then his heart would start going boom, 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 and stop. And they said to him, Mr. Orlofsky, if this was years ago, we would just send you home and know that this will happen at some point and you'll die, and that's it. But now we can take a defibrillator and put it in your chest so that when your heart stops, it will zzz, shock you back to life. I always thought about that when we clap Al Ched, when we say Oshamnu during Slichas, when we'll say it on Yom Kippur, when we go over these. Oshamnu, Bogadnu, Gozalnu, Dibarnu, Dofi, zzz. Going to shock our heart back to life and recognize, I've fallen short. And by recognition of I've fallen short, that's what can allow me to be able to become the person we want to become. Every one of us can set our goals and our dreams and our aspirations and shoot for the stars. And that's it for this week. And what can I say? We wish everybody that you should have a good judgment. It should all be written into the books of life. And what can I tell you? I wish all of Klal Yisrael that there should be a great year of bracha for us and for everybody. And I give you the bracha that my mother always used to give me. I wish for you everything you wish for yourself. And in Mitzvah Hashem, it should be a sweet, good year. And that's it. If you want to find out more about the show, go to RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can make comments. You can leave a message. You can find out about upcoming events. And if you want to sponsor an episode, go to RabbiOrlofsky.com/podcast. Click on the Sponsor an Episode button. I'm David Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.